And hello, subscribers and eavesdroppers. And today I am speaking to a man of the moment for all the wrong reasons. In the early 1990s, together with Bob Brown, Drew Hutton co-founded the Australian Greens. And on Sunday, at a meeting of the party's state council in Queensland, he was expelled from the party he'd founded. And he was expelled over the trans issue, essentially because he refused to suppress debate on his Facebook page that sex was real and that there was a debate to be had about trans policies and what they meant for women and other groups in our society. And he has described his party as having been taken over by a transgender and queer cult. And he's vowing to take the fight further, possibly even challenging his expulsion in the courts. So, comrade, welcome
Thank
to
you.
what's now a pretty non-exclusive club of people who have been cancelled over trans.
Well, I think they probably need to fit all of us into a stadium. The way it's gone is there's certainly been a lot of people who've been expelled or forced out of the Greens on this one issue.
Yeah, absolutely. How have you felt this week, especially since you've been the toast of the Australian, of Sky News, being a hero in these media outlets that you could say are the kind of natural enemy of the Greens? Does that cause
Well,
you any kind of dissonance?
well, they're not only the natural enemies of the Greens, they've got stuck into me on many occasions too. Uh, and yeah, well, I mean, I've always spoken to all media. I've never said I'm only going to talk to left-wing media or only going to talk to people who think I'm okay. So when all this broke out, and I I had a choice. I had a choice for a long time. I could take this up as an issue inside the Greens, which I did. Um, and then I suddenly realised, I'm a bit slow. I realised that uh, I didn't have a chance. These people were after me, whatever I did, and because my original crime was very minor, really, refuse to delete some comments from non-Greens members off my Facebook site. Um, no, they were after me, and the reason was that they were saying to Greens members around the state and around the country, if we can do it to Drew Hutton, we can do it to anybody. So keep your mouth shut and your head down, or we'll expel you. Uh,
All right, yeah.
anyway, so I'll talk to any media on this because the Greens need to know that the community does not appreciate this sort of behaviour. And the only way the Greens will learn that they can't just simply tell their members they're not allowed to speak publicly about policy is to know that the community disapproves of that sort of behaviour.
Yeah, look, I always get really amused when things like this happen because well, I'm not amused by what happened to you. It's shocking. So, full solidarity. But at times like this, the progressive media has to report that something's going on, and it has to report that there is a debate about trans issues. But often these reports read like the journo has got a gun held to their head, saying you have got to report this issue. So I was really amused to read that there was a report in The Age, for instance, and it said, "Oh, there is a debate going on between uh, trans rights and people who believe that people should be able to identify as whatever sex they feel and get all the rights as a result of that, and people who believe that cisgender women should enjoy protections." And I'm thinking, no, actually, no, those people don't accept the term cisgender. that implies that there is such a thing called as a gender identity, and gender critical people don't accept that. So in fact, no, that's not an accurate report. And I saw on the ABC that they said, as a matter of fact, that you had transphobic comments on your Facebook page. Like, they couldn't even say alleged transphobic comments. It was just a fact. We've
Mm,
decided that that
yeah.
is that. So, I mean, where do you start? Like, in this debate, we don't even have a shared notion of truth.
Well, it's and if you even raise the issue, you are transphobic. It's not, and that's what I did in the first instance. I didn't, I wasn't gender critical. I didn't even know what a transphobe was, Julie. Um, when all this broke out, I mean, I'm a retired, burnt out old greenie, and I was retired, and I just put a Facebook book post up, critical. Well, I just said I didn't think the Victorian Greens should have sacked their convener, because she just simply raised the issue. And next minute, my whole world fell in. So, um, yeah,
Okay, can we just let's step back and go through it? Uh,
sure.
why don't we take a moment back in time? Can you take us very briefly back to the early 1990s, when none of us had really heard the term cisgender? It was a very different era. And when you formed the Australian Greens, can you give us a little snapshot of what was going on then?
Well, you mean, how do you mean, in terms of society as a whole, or in terms of
Yeah,
just developing the Greens?
in terms of you and starting the party
Oh,
and
yeah, okay. Well, it actually started. I'd been involved in green politics since the mid 80s, trying to form a Green Party. And there was very little, well, there were a lot of Greens around the country, but not a lot of agreement about what we should be doing politically. And it wasn't until 1990, I had I went and had lunch with Bob Brown in Tasmania. I was visiting Hobart at the time, so I dropped in on him. We had lunch. And one of us said, and neither of us can remember who said it, that maybe this is the time to form the Australian Greens. And um, so we checked it out with people that we knew, and we had a number of meetings. There was a lot of division. I mean, people in certain Marxist parties wanted to be able to join and still remain in their parties. Some people didn't think we should have a Green Party at all. Others thought we should have a Green Party in every shared household in the country. And Bob and I wanted a national Greens, and our view won out in the end. Um, but it took a couple of years of pretty vigorous debate and discussion, and Bob was the sort of saintly, um, figurehead of the whole thing, and did a wonderful job at bringing people together. And I was the hard man who brought people in and you know argued with them, and yeah, finally we got an Australian Greens in 1992. It was hard work. It was really hard work, but then the hard work really started, because we had to build the Greens after that. I mean, that involved, with me, travelling all around the state of Queensland, all around the state, forming branches of the Greens. I mean, I had various contacts in various towns, but I'd often go and sl sleep on somebody's floor, have a meeting, sleep in my car, uh, get up in the middle of the town square and start speaking and hoping a few people might come and be recruited. Um, it was a pretty hard time. Fortunately, I was a lot younger than I am now, and was able to do it reasonably well, and we got the party up and going, and that was a big thing. By 2000, we had a party that was viable and ready to start electing people.
And did you at any point in the intervening years have any other kind of policy tension with the party? Was there any other issue that made you sort of think, am I really aligned with the Greens? Or you did mention that there were a lot of divisions in the party to begin with.
Uh, well, the divisions were mostly about whether we should have a party or not, and if so, what sort of party. They weren't about policy for the most part. maybe I'm sugarcoating it, but I can't remember any really serious debates. The the there were probably some people who are too far left for a lot of people in the Greens, and wanted more, hardcore leftist policies. There were some who were economic rationalists and wanted more market-based approaches. I remember that was a debate, but we sorted those debates out reasonably well. I mean, there was civil and rational debate for the most part. A little bit of tension here and there, but nothing that we couldn't handle. I mean, I stopped my active involvement in the Greens in 2009, and very soon after that, I set up the Lock the Gate movement against coal and coal seam gas. So I really didn't have much to do with the party. After that, I mean, I'd hand out how to vote cards at election time, stick some posters up in my front yard, but I didn't do much more than that. And so it came as a bit of a shock to me to realise that, hey, there was this issue that there's not only is it a contentious issue in the party, but it's one that dozens and dozens of people are being forced out of the party on.
Okay, so can you remember when did the issue first appear on your radar?
2022, 2000, yeah.
2022. Okay.
Well, and
Happened. What
the
happened?
only, so sorry, Julie, what did you say?
And what happened? It came on your radar how? Just for
Oh,
people who haven't followed the story that's
sure.
been running the media this week.
I read in the paper that the Victorian Greens convener, Linda Gale, had been virtually sacked from her job, even though she'd been overwhelmingly elected by the members, because of an article that she'd written 3 years earlier with another woman, saying that the Greens needed to have a look at this issue of uh, biological males who transition to female having access to women's only spaces. They need, like toilets and change rooms and refuges and women's prisons. And and she was sacked. People, screaming and yelling that this was terrible, this was transphobic, and she was sacked. And I um, I didn't even know what a transphobe was, So, but I just thought it was ridiculous that somebody who was elected by the members simply stated publicly that she thought the party needed to look at these issues, um, and she gets sacked for it. So I said it on Facebook, and and all of a sudden there was this eruption of comments and I mean, people from the sort of what I call trans extremist side who said, if you're biological male who transitions, you're a female, you can do everything that a female can. And others saying, well, no, you're a male, you're a biological male, and there are some things that you can't do, and that's have access to spaces that women have fought for a long time. And so that when I didn't take it, I mean, my position was I agreed with the Greens policy at the time. I don't now, but I did then. And I
That's
said,
interesting. Can I
yeah,
stop you there? That's interesting because it's interesting because I think that it talks to a journey that a lot of us have gone through where we start off thinking, well, hang on, if something like the party that I support, whether it's the Greens, whether it's the Labor Party, or if it's an institution, so the Royal Children's Hospital, uh,
mm,
that has decided on a particular policy or treatment, then there must be good reason for it. Is that what you
mm.
thought at the time?
Sort of, but also
And the policy being what? The policy being basically gender self-ID, right?
yes,
That
yes, it
what
was.
people,
But I
however
mean,
people identify, that's what they are. That's what they should get all the rights of the sex that they identify into, correct?
yeah, I interpreted the policy as Um, if you're a male wanting to be a female or vice versa, um, then that's your right. I still believe that, and you should have your rights protected the same as every other Australian. Education, employment, housing, and so on. Um, but that there is no. But anyway, that was my position, and and there were these two other, sides contesting it. And as a result of that, a complaint was put in about me that I was a transphobe and that I had breached the Greens charter and code of conduct. Now, that was a process that went on for years. I mean,
So they were alleging that the problem was that people had left comments on your Facebook
oh
page.
no, the
Oh,
complaint was that I was a transphobe, that my comments were objectionable,
right, right.
even though I agreed with the policy and didn't say anything opposing rights for trans people. You can't say anything on this issue in the
Right. So
Greens.
you were basically saying on your post, there is a debate.
Yes,
Yep.
basically, yes, and
Yep.
there should be a debate.
And there should be.
Yeah. But so I had a complaint laid against me,
Mhm.
and this August of 2022, I think the complaint was. Um, I defended myself against it, but the committee came that looked at. There's a little five-person committee in the Queensland Greens, as there is in most of the state parties,
Yeah.
that looks at disciplinary issues,
Mhm.
and they came up with the judgment that my posts didn't breach the code of conduct or the charter, but that some of the comments did, and they used a, um, a High Court case, the Dylan Voller case, which said that a public figure who um, posts on a social media, is responsible for the comments on that post if they're defamatory. Now, I actually deleted some comments that I thought could be defamatory. I also deleted some which were overly abusive. I mean, people get passionate on Facebook, so I wasn't going to be too precious about all that. But if they were really abusive, I deleted them and told the people why. That you can't talk like that on social media. Um, but anyway, this committee found that the comments were transphobic, ordered me to delete them, and I said, "Well, no, part of the Greens code of conduct and charter, well, the charter in particular, is in favour of democracy, and free speech is at the core of democracy. And I wasn't going to delete them on free speech grounds. So they suspended me until I deleted them. I refused to delete them, so I spent the next 2 years in limbo, my membership in limbo, and and yeah, I continued to work for them in elections, handing out vote cards and all that thing.
Can
But
I just, in those 2 years when you were in limbo, did you start thinking, geez, what is this trans issue?
I did,
Did
yes.
you start reading? Did you start falling down the rabbit hole? As we all
Well, I didn't
couple of
regard it as a rabbit hole, Julie. I regard it as a journey, and well, I mean, it's pretty straightforward, really. I mean, for 2 million years, human beings have believed that there's a thing called a man and a thing called a woman, and it's done us pretty well over that period of time. And it's only been in the last decade that that notion has even been challenged. So, as far as I was concerned, it's a pretty credible point of view. Whether you agree with it or not, it's a credible point of view. And the other thing that I started to become aware of was the whole gender affirmation thing with children. And I read up as much as I could about it, talked to as many experts as I could about it, and it just, and then, of course, the Cass review in the UK came out, which was pretty clear. There is no evidential base for saying that giving children puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and surgery satisfactorily addresses the problems that they have growing up. And I thought, there are doctors out there and medical practitioners whose first response to a child or adolescent when they come to them saying, I'm uncomfortable in my body, is to hand them puberty blockers or suggest surgery. And I just thought that was irresponsible, to say the least. and scandalous, to say the worst, and something which I'd like to see a proper, royal commission into. There's some really bad things going on out there with our children. It's basically child abuse, and I feel very strongly about it. The Greens, however, think that's transphobia to say things like that. So that was the journey I went on. I um, by the time by February of this year, I'd had enough. And I said, look, I've been suspended for 2 years. Those posts have disappeared into the ether. Nobody reads them now. Just give me my membership back, and we'll leave it at that. And they said, oh, you're right.
And
It's not
who's
right.
they? Just so
This is this little committee. It was
right,
called I
yeah.
call it the Committee of Public Safety after the one in the French Revolution, that guillotined people. But it's actually the Constitution and Arbitration Committee. Yeah, it sounds fairly boring, but it actually expels people
Mm.
and expels a lot of people. And yeah, so they said to me, "Oh, you're right. We shouldn't keep you suspended. We're going to expel you." So I thought, okay. Well, those posts have disappeared into the ether. I'll delete them anyway, and then I've satisfied the requirements for getting my membership back, and they refused to accept it and said, no, you're expelled. And so they threatened to expel me with the first email. I deleted the comments, and the sorry, Julie. Sorry,
Not to worry. Can
that
you?
was my phone that just went off and it cut us off.
That's all.
Okay, so I
Yep.
keep
Keep
going.
going. Yep.
I deleted the posts and the comments um, after I received their threat. Um, then they sent me another email saying, "Well, you deleted the comments, but we don't think you did it, with with the right frame of mind. We don't think you were serious, so we're going to expel you anyway." That's what happened. So then I appealed, as I had the right to, because when I was suspended, I had no appeal rights. When I was expelled, I could appeal to State Council. I
Mm.
did that. State Council, I walked into that State Council room and I knew I was gone. Um,
Tell us what you saw. Tell us a little bit about that process. This is on Sunday, right?
well, there were two people from my own branch who were very brave and very rational and cool, calm, and collected, and spoke really well in my favour. Everyone else in that room was um, a transgender zealot who clearly held me in great contempt and or fear or whatever it was they thought about me. Um, their questions revealed that. There was a lot of ageism about it, can I tell you? I've been called a senile old fool and all sorts of things by these people. And it's part of their whole culture that's developed, which I find really obnoxious in the Greens, which is that you don't have civil and rational discussion and debate. You yell and scream at people and and bully them and even physically abuse them at times. And this seems to have permeated the whole organisation. I mean, I've even seen videos of Greens parliamentarians out there physically trying to stop feminists from arguing their positions in the public arena. I mean, this is not good, and this isn't the party that I founded.
Mm.
Um, we valued freedom of speech in Queensland, which is my home state. I spent 20 years fighting the Bjelke-Petersen government on just that issue. Well, no, I fought on environmental issues too, but it were on free speech issues and civil liberties. And we got good legislation at the end of all that, the Peaceful Assemblies Act. We fought hard. Yeah, not just me, there were thousands of us fought hard. And I mean, I went to jail 20 times in that period over that issue. And here's my own party practicing the same sorts of anti-democratic, anti-free speech practices that the Bjelke-Petersen government, pursued. It's absurd.
And I think you talked about how you tried to call the new leader, Larissa Waters, to try and get her to say something, to intervene. She wouldn't.
I called her right at the start, actually,
Yeah.
in 2022,
Mm.
and she wouldn't return my call.
Wouldn't return your call. So she has said that, the party processes have been followed, and she's repeated the kind of zombie mantra you hear a lot, which is trans rights are human rights, as if that's the issue at stake, which it isn't.
Well, I mean, I think Larissa's role in this has been pretty poor.
Mm.
Well, we're old friends, actually. I've known Larissa for a long time, and supported her in her pre-selection for the Senate. But she certainly hasn't been any sort of help to me. There have been a couple of others in the Greens have talked to me. Not, I didn't find their conversations terribly, enlightening, but um, and really not much short of bullying. But Larissa just simply washed her hands of the whole thing, and she's trying to do the same as the leader of the Australian Greens, and that's it's very disappointing, really. Um, because she's the only person in the Greens who could fix this. If Bob Brown was still there or Christine Milne was still the leader of the Greens, you think it had come to this? No way in the world. They would have stepped in at some stage and said, this is not acceptable. Greens members have the right to free speech. They should be able to say what they like on all policy. And they would have taken on the authoritarians in the party. Larissa is beholden to them. And so are all the other parliamentarians, I might add. None of them have stood up on this. Not one parliamentary person has rung me or emailed me or texted me to say, good luck, Drew. Or I hope you keep your membership. Or I don't agree with you, mate, but good luck. Not even that. They just all, ducked for cover, went to water on the whole thing, and and instead of doing that, Larissa should be up there saying to the state organisations two things. One is stop the expulsions. 40 plus expulsions from the party in 3 years is just absurd. It's a purge. It's not expulsions. It's a purge. And secondly, make sure that all Greens members have the right to free speech. She should be saying that. She should be taking a stand. Instead, she's frightened of these people. These people are a cult. A cult is um, has a number of characteristics. The closed system of beliefs, an arcane language that they understand but nobody else does, and a very authoritarian, punitive approach to anybody who disagrees with them. That's what that's the sort of people who now control the Greens at all levels.
I mean, Bob Brown and Christine Milne, they stuck up for you in this process. I think a lot of people are waiting for Bob Brown to do the ultimate disavowal of his party and say, this is not the party that I started. He hasn't done that. And in fact, he's taken the opportunity at various junctures to say the opposite, to say, oh, yes, this is still the party that I founded.
Mm.
I mean, I'm not asking you to get into his head. I mean, we can't do that, but what's your interpretation of what?
Well, I mean, Bob Bob is a hero of mine. I admire Bob more than anybody else in this country. Bob's done more for this country than just about anybody. And Christine, likewise. They're wonderful human beings. They do enormously good work, especially with the Bob Brown Foundation. And I mean, I regard that as the most effective environmental organisation in the country, actually. Um, and they've got they've put their head up to argue for me on membership and on this thing. So I'm grateful to them for that. Um, they no longer have an official position in the party, and so it's not really up to them to do something about it. The person who should be doing something about it is Larissa, who's the leader of the Australian Greens. I mean, um, Bob and Christine might come out and say something about it, but it's really not up to them as far as I'm concerned. I'm not at all disappointed that they haven't.
And do you think that the Greens' problems on this issue are indicative of kind of a deeper crisis in the party? Like, is it just is it just a problem that's developed about trans issues, or is there something more
Look,
going on?
there are a lot of really good people in the party. I should have said that before, actually. I don't want to give the impression that this is a party just full of authoritarian, zealots. It's not. Most people in the Greens are, they work at the grassroots level. They're really good moral people who are committed to their cause. What's happened in the Greens, though, is that a starting about a decade ago, a group of ideologically driven people, and they're very, very committed and passionate people. They decided that they would take over the Greens. Now, the Greens is just the sort of party to take over because it's full of passionate people who are politically inexperienced. And not like the Labor Party where you've got all these heavies who've been around, for the last 3 decades, 4 decades, and know when there's a problem emerging and can move to deal with it. That's not the case with the Greens. The Greens are largely a very inexperienced party. So if you want to enter a party and take it over, the Greens is as good as any, and that's what happened. Um, and it coincided with a whole new sort of queer theory, transgender theory, coming out of postmodernism that starts to permeate the left in particular. So um, that started. So there's a small group of people who enter the party. They get recruits based on trans rights are human rights, or trans rights are non-negotiable, which I'd like to talk about in a minute too. Um, but uh, and then they spread their influence because two things. One is that people get attracted to this new theory. Um, and secondly, a whole lot of liberal humanitarian type people think it's only about these, people who are being disadvantaged and oppressed, and they just, they want to stand up for them. And but instead, what it is people using a particular theory and a particular approach to seize power in the party and wield that power, and they do it with great ruthlessness. The other thing, can I just say, sorry, I'm
Yeah, yeah, no,
talking too long
no,
here.
no, 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 keep going.
Um, this slogan, trans rights are non-negotiable. What nonsense! I've never heard a sillier statement in my life. All rights are negotiable. You have to be if you're going to if we'd said, gay rights are non-negotiable in 2001, you would never have gay marriage because you had to negotiate the whole issue of gay rights to get to the point where it was possible to have gay marriage. And also you have to negotiate if you're going to say this particular group deserves rights, these particular rights, the right for trans women to enter women's only spaces, for example, then you have to negotiate on that because you're going that particular right impinges on the rights of others, in this case, in biological women, who many of whom would be fearful about biological males entering their spaces, their intimate spaces. So what should be happening is a civil and rational dialogue, discussion and debate go on between those two schools of thought about, well, okay, where do you draw the line? What are the human rights that apply in this case? That's not what's happening. The trans movement has decided that they will suppress physically, if need be, any attempt to have such a discussion.
In my view, because they're a regressive movement. That's my view. I think they're a politically regressive movement and they have to suppress dissent.
Well, it's pretty shallow. Their beliefs are shallow, no doubt about that. Um, I mean, queer theory is, it's basically just anything that's out of the normative is necessarily good. Anything that's normative is necessarily bad. I mean, that's a stupid and superficial view of the world. And if you actually start questioning it, um, you reveal its inadequacies. And yeah, that's exactly what they're afraid of.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that is part of the problem that a lot of us who are alive to this issue face is trying to explain to some of the very, good, decent people on the left, if you like,
Mm.
that this is not a movement that's necessarily analogous to the civil rights causes that we've
No.
seen in the past. Because if you have a look at who is disenfranchised by what we call or we're supposed to think of as trans rights, well, it's women and some of the most marginalized women around.
Mm.
It's gays and lesbians whose right to free association has gone backwards. It's disturbed young people who cannot access ethical therapy to help them through their problems, and are just kind of given hormones, like you say. It's a regressive movement, in my view. I found, and in your view, you think it's starting to impact you on the Greens' electoral success and appeal?
I think it potentially will. And not just this issue. Um, I think that um, look, there is a really important role for the Greens to play in Australian politics. I mean, the two major parties are pretty woeful on the key issues, on a lot of key issues, environmental ones being, right at the forefront. And so there's a role for the Greens. Um, but the way they deal with the public, their inability to speak to meaningfully to ordinary people, um, who have their own issues and their own priorities and so on. I think the Greens have like progressive movement generally has real trouble talking to ordinary people, and um, and they talk down to them. And this is one clear issue. Anybody who doesn't use the right pronouns, just gets yelled at. Um, that sort of nonsense that's going on. Um, surrounding people who are handing out how to vote cards for another political party and yelling abuse at them. On booths. That's not acceptable. These are the sorts of things that are getting through to people about the Greens, that they're weird and unlikable. And uh, they've hit a plateau. The Greens, it's somewhere between 9 and 12%, even when there's a huge gap, where they could be filling, like in the Tasmanian elections. They still only got 13 to 14%. And in the last election, they got 11% federally in an election that should have favoured them. And that's where they're going to sit now. And all they can go is down if they continue with this sort of authoritarian, elitist approach to the Australian public.
Mm. So it's an issue that becomes kind of symbolic of other problems, doesn't it, at some
Yeah,
point? I think one of the things that I thought was really valuable about what you've done, Drew, is that you've actually also made it clear that it's not just the Greens who has got a problem with this stuff, and especially with trans policies, that Labor and the Liberals are in fact, uh, are just as susceptible to having their judgment
yeah,
clouded on the issue. And
yes.
I would, in fact, argue, And it doesn't necessarily give me pleasure to argue this, but I would say that the Labor Party is, in fact, in some ways, even more in strife about this, because it's a Labor Party that's actually passed
Yeah.
this dystopian legislation,
Yes.
self-ID, conversion therapy laws, which are just,
Yeah.
uh,
Hate speech.
yeah, hate
Hate
speech
speech.
laws. Absolutely. They're the ones who have passed this. And even worse than that, no dissenters are coming
Yeah.
forward. At least in the Greens, there are dissenters coming forward, right?
Well, not a lot of us.
Not a
But
lot.
no, you're right. In the Greens, they are starting to come forward now. Thank goodness. 'Cause I was pretty lonely there for a while.
And so tell me, Drew, where to from here? Where
Well,
going to take this?
I mean, I've made the strategic decision that I'm not going to direct my main message to the Greens Party. Certainly not to the leadership of the Greens Party. They've made it clear they don't want to confront this issue. They're not going to take on the the whole cult mentality. Um, so I'm directing my message to the people of Australia, to the general public, and saying this is a real issue. It's an issue for the Greens, but it's also an issue for the whole of society. And they need to be aware that it is, and that the Greens are not addressing it in the right way. And if the Greens don't address it properly, then their vote will go down. Now that's any political party. That's got to be concern number one. Um, that you keep going on this trajectory, you're going to find your vote, you know, one, two, three, halve what it was before. And any sort of leadership in the Greens that's worth it, in any party that's worth its salt, will look at that and say we have to do something about it. That's my strategy. Quite open. I'm going to be talking to the public, and I'll talk to newspapers like the Australian, which is criticised me time and again, and is the most anti-green outlet in the country. Um, but people read the Australian, people look at Sky News, people read all sorts of tabloids. I'm going to be talking to them all. I'm going to be telling them what's going on, and if the Greens want to just ignore that, they do so at their peril.
All right, well, all power to you fighting. As we know, this is a global issue. It's probably about, I don't know, the future of social democracy and all sorts of
Yes,
big
it
things.
is.
Yeah.
Mm.
So thank you so much for speaking with me, and the best of luck.
It was my pleasure, Julie. Thank you.